hello everyone, welcome to an analysis of dance where we discuss the movements and debuts on the Billboard dance charts in immaculate detail with in-depth reviews of each debut each week. Holy shit, thank God coming off of last week which was really mediocre, we finally got a week that I can classify as calm. I mean, there was barely any debuts this week, some at least decent movements, and realistically outside of that, not really a ton to talk about, and given that I've included my eligibility rules, that makes this week even easier to manage, thank God. Shame the quality is pretty damn good too, because honestly I wish there was more of it, but hey, I'll definitely take it. Unfortunately though, the mediocrity is still here, like on Hot Dance with Miles on It by Marshmello and Kane Brown at number 1. I mean, come on, it's so far from its peak at this point, and given the fact that both Marshmello and Kane Brown are pushing different singles to radio right now, we can move the fuck on from this. Come on. But at least holding steady beneath it is the Day's Notion remix by Crystal at number 2, which is absolutely sticking around on streaming but just doesn't have enough to get back on the Hot 100. But given that the bottom half of that chart is one of its strongest at the moment, that doesn't surprise me. It probably is just outside bubbling under range at this point. I mean, it's at least holding steady compared to Forever Young by David Guetta, Alphaville and Ava Max at number 3, which is just plummeting in all formats, especially on radio. Even if sales weren't as bad as I expected, the lack of momentum for this is really telling. It's probably going to be gone soon. Good riddance. And especially given that Slow Motion by Marshmello and the Jonas Brothers at number 4 has better radio than it so far, and even if, again, the streaming is not good, this has got enough momentum to get up. I mean, seriously, Marshmello's label, can you use some of that money that you're using to keep Miles on It up and actually push this properly? Please. Meanwhile, what doesn't need that money is Chest by Joyful at number 5, which is gaining a big amount of momentum on streaming pretty much entirely off of TikTok, and given that it's not really got anything else that can support it, I'm curious if this will get higher, but I really don't think it will at this point. And on that note, another serious contender is Somehow Never Ender by Justice and Tame Impala at number 6, where it's finally hit a new peak, and given that radio is really on board with it to the point where it's close to hitting the top 40 on pop Airplay, which is incredible to me. Yeah, this is absolutely going to stick around. I have no complaints that it's gone past 26 weeks. It's a great song, no complaints. And given that a certain big song fell out the top 10, thankfully this managed to deny Move by Adam Port and Strive featuring Malachi from getting any higher at number 7, and good riddance too. I'm starting to get really sick of this. We can move on. I mean, that's certainly not the case for our big return to the charts in the top 10 at all, which is really only here because of a remix boost. Yep, it's Hypnotized by Anima and Ellie Goulding at number 8. Look, I'm not a huge fan of the John Summer remix, it does feel a bit safe for him, but if it's managing to give this song enough points to make the year-end list, I absolutely cannot complain, and hey, the song's great too, no complaints for me whatsoever. And hell, on the topic of new top 10 entries, Nunca Muda by Cypher, Main and Nides is actually up to the top 10 at number 9, and look, it's kind of really telling that the song that's closest to Drift Funk in this scene is actually getting enough momentum to be the highest peaking one in years, but really this one's just got a ton going for it on streaming, and really, I cannot complain. I really would like to see Drift Funk come back in favor of this god-awful Brazilian funk stuff. Finally, Under Your Spell by Snow Strippers fell down to number 10. Look, it's hit 27 weeks at this point. It's stuck around way longer than I think anyone expected. It's not going to go off that easily next week, considering that I expect Hypnotized to leave the top 10, but really, this is in danger of falling off soon. Not complaining, it had a really great run. And on the topic of things I'm fine with leaving, yeah, we had only one notable fall off, and that is Don't Stop by Glam Strider yet again, but I do expect this to come back because this song's been on a roller coaster run, and really I just hope it actually goes away at some point. It's stuck around long enough. But man, what's so fascinating is that the rotation recently for Hot Dance has been really damn busy, to the point where we have stuff that falls under every single notable movement that I've already talked about. I mean, we had actual eligible falls like Want to Love by Aloe Boy and Hostile Government Takeover EDM remixed by a gift from Todd and Vinnie Margie just plummeting out of the top 10 down to 19 as the sales dry up, not surprising there. And there's even borderline cases like Say My Name remix by Morgan Seatree featuring Florence and the Machine down to 21, and Tell You Straight by Jiggets at 22. Really, I hope all of these are able to stick around. They're really goddamn good songs and they make this chart better. We could really use them actually being hits. But on that note, aside from Hypnotized by Nima and Ellie Goulding returning to the top 10 as I've already said, there are songs that actually fall into jumps this week, and honestly, they're a bit more on the divisive positive side for me. On one hand, we have Funk de Beliza by Teki and Scyther Main at 17, a song that's kind of souring on me recently. But on the other hand, we have So Good by Nosy at 20, which, considering the song by Ellie Oaks is blowing up in the UK with this exact same sample, it's nice to see this one not get sidelined. And hey, I actually might like it more, I can't complain there. Certainly more so than our debuts. All of one, and it looks really bad, starting with number 18, The Less I Know The Better by Mal P. I shouldn't even be surprised that we're here at this point. I mean, I remember when I was really trying to root for this guy back in 2023, and both Gimme That Bounce and especially Drugs from Amsterdam have really held up as great tech house songs that stood out in the scene. But seriously, even with some good songs afterwards like Dress Code and Beats for the Underground, he's really fallen off any sort of goodwill from me. I mean, both On Again and Receipts already pushed my limits, but with this, yeah, I'm officially done, because this is just Some Boy 2024 again. And as you all know, I don't need more of that. I mean, seriously, it's literally the exact same formula, taking a well-established and really well-liked song from an Australian artist that's easy to sing along with and turning it into the sort of absolutely worthless remix that has absolutely no reason to exist and flat out just sounds like it was made in 10 minutes. I mean, I do think that Tame Impala's The Less I Know The Better is actually a much better song than somebody that I used to know, so it's at least a little bit more tolerable. And I actually will give Mal P this, he actually tries to chop up the vocals on the drops, which is the only reason that this is above Some Way 2024 in my eyes. But really, when you get to those drops, they're atonal, lacking in any sort of melody, and sound like they were made in 10 minutes. Seriously, I could make this in my sleep if I wanted to. The mixing is really subpar, the complete focus on bass line as the melody on the drops gives this absolutely no momentum. The way that the sample is integrated sounds really cheap, especially with those guitars sounding flat as all hell, and the song just plods along at a really slow pace where I question why the hell this is even 3 minutes at all. I mean, seriously, if this is the standard that tech house production is starting to get, where this sort of lazy crap is being enabled, especially considering this is Mal P's highest charting song on this chart right now, yeah, the genre is really starting to sour on me, and really I'm just grateful that acts are starting to push their way outside of it. See Dom Dollar. And considering that this guy's previous single before this was Merthyr, a song that I actually liked, yeah, there's no fucking excuse for this. So yeah, this is trash. One of the worst songs that's charted here in recent memory, and I can only hope, just like how Some Boy 2024 killed off Fisher's mainstream momentum and unfortunately also Chris Lake's, I hope that this does the same to Mal P so he can get the hint that nobody wants to hear crap like this anymore. So yeah, this is where we're at, people. This is a goddamn shame. Really waste of talent here. But wow, thank God that Dance Pop effectively came in to save a lot of this week, because after that I really needed something like this. Although I am really pleasantly surprised that Revolving Door by Tate McRae held at number 1. Now I don't expect this to stick at number 1 next week. It's up against a big Lady Gaga album bomb that's likely going to give her a ton of momentum with Abracadabra currently at number 2. That song's going back to number 1, there should be nothing to worry about here. But even without radio support, it's actually doing pretty decently on streaming and holding well on the Hot 100. I mean, it's not exactly that surprising considering it's a much better song than most of the other singles on the album, but still, really telling there. But really outside that, not a ton of notes in terms of our movements. We did lose both of The Weeknd's album cuts as dropouts, and they got replaced by Lisa's album cuts instead, so nothing really happened at all. And the Tate McRae songs didn't even fall that hard either. The charts are just too weak at the moment for an album like that to actually fall off fast. But hey, at least Lisa's impact led to 2 debuts this week that I actually get to talk about, although it is interesting when you actually get to them, because we start off with number 15, Chill by Lisa.
The hills, only want you for the thrills. Come on fast, it won't last. All you need to chill.
So, Alter Ego's impact this week really didn't feel that important when it came to this chart, where we only had 1 album cut that wasn't released as a previous single actually debuting here, and it debuted at the very bottom, and it's not going to stick around either. Wonderful. And given how low it debuted, I was at least a little bit excited for this one, considering deep cuts from K-pop artists aren't usually the sort of thing I get to talk about, and yeah, pretty solid. It's more in that late 2000s style of sleek, dark pop music with a really great bass line, against the wavering Sims and the multi-track vocals of Lisa that actually sound pretty damn good, even if she does sound a little bit pitchy at points. But honestly, they still radiate the sort of playful energy that at least matches the content here, and honestly said content I'm a bit divided on. I mean, I appreciate the playful bend that she has on these lyrics, and it is nice to see her feel so confident in herself, but when you get to the actual writing itself, you can tell that she thinks that this is a lot clever than it actually is, to the point where she has a ton of puns and double entendres, including comparing herself to Mona Lisa on the hook, haha. And man, they are just not as good as she thinks they are. They just get really clunky and kind of get really grating after a while. And seriously, while I get that she's flaunting in her success, the comparisons just do not work for me that well. Especially when you get to the hook, where she's using the titular word to represent both chills in this relationship from shivering, and telling this guy to chill out and not take things too fast. Again, it's very divisive in a way that I don't really like that much. Honestly though, the production does enough to elevate this. It's actually pretty damn solid, and even if it's not my favorite of the album by any means, I mean, I'm not complaining that it's here at all. It's a good song, no complaints from me. Number 14, Moonlit Floor, Kiss Me by Lisa.
Kiss me out on the moonlit floor. Kiss me under the Paris twilight. So kiss me.
And we have another case of the album getting its pre-album singles onto this charts, with a song that realistically should have been on here earlier, but given that the charts started just after it peaked on pop Airplay, I'm not surprised that it's taken the album for this to actually hit the charts. And yeah, it's great. I actually really like this one a lot. I mean, it's really hard to fuck up the original Sixpence None the Richer song Kiss Me. It's one of my childhood staples, and I've heard it a ton at this point, to the point where the interpretation by Lisa here is honestly really deserved and really great. I mean, aside from that, the production is really tasteful, with yet another really good bass line against a really chill atmosphere that allows the focus to be on Lisa's vocals, where she sounds a lot better here than on Chill. Her vocal delivery is absolutely great. And given how love-struck and comfortable she is in this particular song, it really does suit her vocal delivery quite well, especially when she talks about the green-eyed French boy, where you can tell that this is based on a real scenario that she was involved in. And given that the original sample is used quite well, where there's some clever flips on the hook that actually do sound quite good and make this distinguishable from the original track, yeah, I was really on board with this one. And you can tell how much both Lisa and her team behind her actually really cared about this one. This guy was really something special for her, and turning it into a song like this that feels this tasteful, it really does feel welcome, especially coming from a K-pop singer. So yeah, she absolutely sells this. The production is really goddamn good, and it doesn't ruin one of my favorite childhood songs, so I'm inclined to call this pretty damn great. It's a shame that it took the album for this to charts, and it probably will be gone next week, but hey, I can't complain about this being here. Great song! But here's the insane part. No unique debuts on dance sales this week, so let's get both that and dance streaming out of the way quickly. In streaming, Revolving Door by Tate McRae actually managed to hold at number 1, which is interesting. I don't really see this sticking at number 1. Again, Mayhem's going to impact hard this week, but it is interesting that it was there at all, especially with Abracadabra by Lady Gaga at number 2. Again, it's going to hit number 1 because of Mayhem's boost. Further down, Sao Paulo by The Weeknd and Anita just plummeted to 15, as it's just absolutely not sticking around. Really telling the Hurry Up Tomorrow has had absolutely zero impact outside of Timeless sticking around. That's really unfortunate there. And Born Again by Lisa featuring Doja Cat and Ray rebounded to number 9. Again, this isn't surprising considering it's part of Lisa's album. It got a huge boost on streaming, and while I don't see it lasting that long, it is doing much better than I expected. But at least Dance Sales had some action going on, even if it wasn't that notable. I mean, there wasn't a ton. Abracadabra by Lady Gaga took over number 1 because it's one of the most strongest songs on this chart right now, and the distance between it and Hostile Government Takeover EDM remix by A Gift from Tom Vinnie Marchi at number 2, it is pronounced there. That song just absolutely plummeted. But besides that, Born Again by Lisa featuring Doja Cat and Ray rebounds to number 4 because of the album, and even Hypnotized by Nima and Ellie Goulding scraped back at 15 thanks to the John Summit remix. It's probably the reason why Drum Death by West End and Hosanna is up to 13 along with it. His label is just that strong. Sadly though, the other debuts didn't really see that sort of jump, with a lot of them just plummeting off last week. Revolving Door by Tate McRae at number 9, Too Much by Duff Cameron at 11, and even Reawaker by the other Lisa featuring Felix down to 14. Ouch. ouch. Thankfully though, both of the songs here that debuted are songs that I've covered, and under my eligibility rules, I get to skip them. Lovely. The Less I Know The Better by Mal P at number 5 on the bad side, and Chill by Lisa at number 7 on the good side. Lovely. But man, if you're expecting Dance Mix Show Airplay to really do much of anything this week, it was at least admittedly the one with the most debuts, even if I won't be covering a certain track from them. But really, outside of some significant movements that are at least promising, there's not really a ton to note here. I mean, seriously, the number 1 is still Hypnotized by Norma and Ellie Goulding, which is exactly what I predicted last week, as it's just got way too much upward momentum to really fall off. I mean, it is getting rotated out fast, but honestly, the fact that it hit number 1 for 2 weeks is awesome. Great to see. And this gives room for Someone Else by GT Office at number 2, which is just surging at this point, and it's already at the top on media basis spins. It's going to hit number 1 comfortably next week. Thankfully, Visions of You by Hayla actually managed to hit the top 3 at number 3, and while I don't really expect it will actually get any higher, considering it's starting to stall out on spins already, the fact that an album cut with so little streams was actually able to get here, that's awesome, and I hope there's more coming from Hayla. And on that note, Heaven Knows by Cascade and Punctual featuring Poppy Bascombe is actually up to number 4, where in a rare feat, Monster Cat gets a top 5 on any chart, and considering the competition beneath it, I don't expect this to get higher, but the fact they got to the top 5 at all is awesome. Great to see Punctual finally get a hit here properly. Then there's Push the Tempo by Subfocus and KDB at number 5, which is at 15 weeks, and at the rate it's going, it probably will survive to a full 20 weeks, which is awesome. I did not expect it would be this song. Although with what's beneath it, I do see it getting overtaken soon, starting with Tantalizing by Tiesto and Soki Siren at number 6. Again, it's slowing down to a crawl at this point. I don't expect it to really become a massive year-end contender, but it is doing decently well. But where the upwards momentum is really pronounced out of nowhere is I'm Going Out by Steve Aoki, Sam Feld, Xandra, Noel Rodgers, and Zach Abel at number 7, which is just surging across the board, and it's probably going to make a run for the number 1 soon, which, considering how bad it stalled out initially, that's really interesting. It's actually growing on me as well, I can't complain. But once we skip past the festering turd that is Crash by Loud Luxury at number 8, we got 2 legitimately excellent songs finally hitting the top 10, and while I don't expect either to gain a ton of momentum, they are here at all, and that's awesome to see. The first is Never Walk Alone by Blondish and Stevie Appleton at number 9, which, man, it's great to see Blondish finally get some actual momentum, and with the song's success and actually debuting on the dance charts late, I'm not exactly surprised that it's finally gaining the top 10 boost here. I really hope it gets higher. And even better, Into the Blue by Will Sass and Camilla's at number 10, and if you told me that the sampled singer from Fred Again's Cammy Like I Do would get a top 10 hit and a chance at the year-end list, that would be really weird to me, but honestly, I'm just happy that it's here. It's one of my favorite songs on this chart right now. I really hope it gets higher. But thankfully, our falls and fall-offs are stupidly manageable, with the only fall-off being Forever by Hugo and Diplo featuring Malou and Yuna, which was leaving anyways and will make the year-end list. And outside of I Only Smoke When I Drink by Namino just plummeting down to 32, as it probably will be gone next week too, we only had 2 tiny falls this week, with Cave by Dom Dollar and Tovlo at 11, and Like Sunshine by Laverne and Segala at 20. These barely even fell this week, and they're gonna stick around. That's really revealing. But man, our jumps were also really small this week and were easily manageable, and it's really telling that songs aren't really rotating out this week. They've just been holding pretty damn steady. I mean, the only jumps were the continued gains for I Follow Rivers by Tiesto featuring Oaks at 12, and Abracadabra by Lady Gaga at 15, and off the debut, Say My Name remix by Morgan Seatree featuring Florence and the Machine surged up to 22, as it's going to likely be a massive hit on this chart. No complaints from me whatsoever. And speaking of which, we only have 3 debuts, and one of them falls under my eligibility rules for songs that debuted 5 weeks from the current tracking period, which means that I'm skipping covering Dreaming by Dom Dollar featuring Daya at number 40. And given that it's not really gaining a ton of momentum on this chart and it's kind of stalling out a little bit early, I don't expect us to have a really big run. That's a shame, it's a good song. But that leaves only 2 more. Christ, starting with number 39, Happy Now by TWINSICK.
'Cause since I'm lost, you must be found. I wanna make you proud, don't wanna be without you. 'Cause I owe you, yeah, I owe you.
Another week, another another Stutter House leaning duo that gains a bit of momentum on the charts, this time a Minneapolis-based duo who's been gaining a pretty decent amount of momentum with some songs getting over 1 million streams. They seem to be this sort of organic mid-tier sort of notoriety that you'd expect to charts at the bottom of this chart every now and then. And honestly, I don't really have a ton to say about this track. It's reliable, straightforward Stutter House with some muffled progressive house-esque synths on the verses that play off a really nice atmosphere with a tight beat that actually sounds quite nice. And the uncredited female vocals, they have presence. They at least stand out a little bit better than I expected, but don't really stand out in the overall scene, let's be real. The drops are nice, the production is really tasteful, it's really hitting the floor of that scene that I actually really enjoy. Stutter House consistently has good production and this is no exception, but man, I wish it raised the ceiling a little bit more. I've heard a ton of songs like this, and while it is good and I do expect this to have a bit of staying power, it's not exactly great. You can take it or leave it with this one. It's perfectly fine though, there's nothing bad about it, but again, it doesn't stand out much. And finally, number 38, Euphoria by Armin van Buuren, Alok, Norma and Martine, and LAWRENT. Topic of obvious radio baits, yeah, this one doesn't surprise me that it debuted here. Armin van Buuren's a consistent hitmaker on this chart, and bringing Alok on board is also a reliable case to get this to actually be a hit. And the song itself, actually I really like this a lot more than I expected. I mean, of course, Norma and Martine was going to be one of the reasons why this got a huge boost in my eyes. She's one of the best vocalists in mainstream EDM at the moment, and even if her voice is clipping the mix way too often and does get a bit tinny and grainy in the vocal production, it's not great at all. She's got the sort of belting presence that absolutely works for a song like this, talking about euphoria and this relationship. And when the production behind her is absolutely stunning with the trance pivot that I really was hoping that Armin van Buuren would go back to, with the sort of gorgeous synth production against a legitimately great bass line and a really spacious mix that allows for the drops to really hit with a ton of presence. Yeah, I was genuinely on board with this, and given that Alok's been going down this more trancey route, I'm not complaining that it's continuing to get some actual quality for once. I mean, it just won me over immediately on sound alone, and I can absolutely see this being a live show staple for Armin van Buuren in the next few years, and given the absolute hugeness of this mix, that's a great thing in my eyes. I mean, it's not great, the vocal production really does drag this down from being something that I'll listen to frequently, but it is really damn good, and honestly, if this is what gets Armin van Buuren another big hit, I can't complain. It's way better than Part of Me, and I can't complain that it's actually charting here at all. Good song. But honestly, for the week as a whole, in terms of debuts, I was actually pretty impressed here. I liked nearly all of these, with the obvious exception of The Less I Know The Better by Mal P, which is absolutely running away as one of the worst hits that I've seen in recent memory. Absolutely the worst of the week here. But everything else was really goddamn good, to the point where I'm going to give the best on back of really tasteful production and a really good interpretation to Moonlit Floor Kiss Me by Lisa. Although Euphoria was really damn close there. They're both really solid and really close in quality as well. Next week, oh boy, there's going to be album impacts from both Jenny and especially Lady Gaga on Dance Pop, and even with that, on Hot Dance we're going to get the new collaboration between David Guetta and Sia debuting really high. Just my luck there. But yeah, that's all for this episode of an analysis of dance. See you next time.